Hello everyone, welcome to IELTS Speed Up course offered by Thompson School. In today's lesson, we are going to focus on IELTS speaking test, guys. And first of all, we will go through the assessment criteria. I will try to explain these 4 criteria in a more detailed way, and of course, you should understand the general test format, and at the end we are going to focus on IELTS speaking part 1 questions, guys. First, you should understand that IELTS interview is divided into 3 parts where you are going to be asked different types of questions, and of course you should be answering them accordingly. So, part 1, part 2, and part 3. First, you are going to be assessed on fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. So, first, let's start from fluency and coherence. These are measurements of speakers' ability to communicate logically, clearly, and without difficulty in English. For fluency, a perfect band score of 9 means the speaker doesn't have to pause to recall some words or mentally review grammatical structures he or she is going to use in their sentences. The speaker can focus on the message he or she wishes to convey rather than the language needed to say it. Coherence is related to fluency, but slightly different. It measures how well your ideas make sense together. A high band score indicates that a person can use a variety of cohesive features and discourse markers with ease in order to articulate ideas in a clear and logical way. So, if you really want to get a high score, you should avoid making some pauses, some irrelevant pauses, and making some noise like So just it's better if you keep silence when you're thinking. It looks more elegant. So we will come to this later. Lexical resource. This scoring category measures your vocabulary. You will be assessed on your ability to use words appropriately and accurately. It means you should try to pick up words in the right context with the correct meaning. Sometimes IELTS candidates really want to impress the examiner by using some high-level words. It is good, but sometimes they use them in inappropriate context and make a mistake. It means this candidate is using a word that he or she is not familiar with, and they lose points for this. So, IELTS speaking rewards test takers with large vocabularies. If you have very good and large vocabulary, you are more likely to get a high score. The examiner will be listening carefully to assess whether or not you can use a wide variety of words and phrases, which is good, or whether you use the same language over and over again, which is bad. Related to this, you will also be assessed on whether or not you can accurately paraphrase the examiner's questions fluently. When it comes to grammatical range and accuracy, your grammar will be assessed, and you should try to use a wide range of grammatical constructions appropriately and accurately. Keep in mind that your grammatical range score is not simply about avoiding grammatical mistakes or providing with error-free sentences. So, limiting your errors is important. However, You can only reach a very high band score if you can also demonstrate that you have mastered complex sentence structures, verb tenses, and other advanced grammatical features. If your grammar skills are limited or you have a lot of grammar mistakes when you speak, it is especially important that you record yourself when you answer practice questions. Listen for errors that you make regularly and think about how you can fix them. Get a feedback on your grammar and work on it. And of course, the next evaluation criteria is pronunciation. IELTS speaking also measures your pronunciation. Top band scores only go to those test takers whose pronunciation is effortless for a native speaker to understand. Scores are reduced for mispronunciation, especially if pronunciation problems make it difficult to comprehend a speaker's message. So, your way of pronunciation should not affect the examiner's understanding. Keep in mind that pronunciation involves more than just articulating individual words correctly. Many students have even larger pronunciation problems on a sentence level. These problems occur when a student doesn't have a feel for native like rhyme or intonation patterns. Unfortunately, there is no easy fix for most pronunciation issues. Generally, the best way to improve is to use your English in daily life. If you cannot use English on a daily basis, then it can be helpful to listen to recordings of English speakers, for example, podcasts. Pause the recordings occasionally and attempt to pronounce entire sentences exactly the same way as the speaker. Try to copy the speaker's tone, the rise or fall of the voice, and of course you should learn and manage to make pauses where it is relevant. Try to copy how the speaker speeds up, slows down, and pauses throughout the sentence. Even try to mimic the speaker's emotion. You may feel a little silly doing this exercise, but that is actually a good sign you're doing it correctly. Over time, you will develop your ear to hear the sounds of English and reproduce them more accurately. Now, let's talk about part 1 IELTS speaking questions. If you have had an opportunity to interact with English speakers, it is very likely that you have already answered questions that would fit in part 1, because these questions target basic personal information about things like your school, hometown, your interests, hobbies, even the weather in your hometown. So that's the reason why part 1 in speaking test is called personal interview. Treat these questions like a warm-up for the rest of the exam. If you are feeling nervous about the test, hopefully by the end of this section you will feel more comfortable and prepared to tackle parts 2 and 3. You should understand that the questions from part 1 are noticeably easier than parts 2 and 3. However, this doesn't mean you should not prepare for part 1. To the contrary, your preparation can really pay off. Getting off to a good start is important to show the examiner that you are feeling comfortable and confident. With enough practice, you can feel very comfortable answering part 1 questions without much effort. Now, let's talk about part 1 questions in a more detailed way. So, part 1 is simply introduction and interview. So, you will be asked questions about yourself on topics such as hometown, family, accommodation, neighborhood, education, job, weather, laughing, keeping in contact, and daily routines. So these are the most common topics, and of course you should follow certain rules. First, the most important rule for IELTS test is trying to understand the question. It is really important that you understand the question and talk about what you're asked so you don't go off the topic. Second, do not repeat the question. So it means you should avoid using the same grammatical structure that the examiner used when he or she asked a question. For example, if they ask you, what is your favorite color? And you answer, my favorite color is yellow, for example. You are repeating the same structure and you are going to lose points for this. So it is always better if you paraphrase their question and answer using completely different structure. Third, try to give an extended answer. You should understand that the examiner is going to assess your speaking based on your language skills. So you're not going to be assessed on your answers if you answer simply with yes or no. So try to give an extended answer, show your language abilities. And of course, try to keep an eye contact with the examiner. This is very important for many reasons. And the most important reason is that you are going to show your confidence. Okay guys, now let's talk about trying to give an extended answer. So you should try to impress the examiner with your ability to give full answers to his or her questions. And of course, it is very important that you avoid simply answering yes or no or any other short responses generally. For this, you can use wide variety of strategies, and here I'm going to explain some of them. So you can give a reason, offer an example, give details, or speculate. Now, let's see how each strategy can be used. So, let's consider this first question. What job would you like to do? And your answer using a reason. I've always wanted to be a vet. I love animals and I think it would be a very rewarding job. So you are explaining why you would like to be a vet. So you're giving a reason. Next question. What skills do you need for this job? So you can offer an example, but first you should mention the skill that you are going to need. I think you need to be sensitive to people's feelings. If you are dealing with their sick or injured pets, you need to be honest, but also appreciate how they might be feeling. So you're explaining the situation and offering an example, which is very nice way to extend your answer. So next, where do you come from? You can answer in a detailed way and thus expand on your answer. I come from Bukhara. It is one of the ancient cities in my country and is crowded with tourists most of the year. Okay? And the speculation, do you often go out to restaurants? Sometimes you might be asked a question where your answer is no, but you should try to imagine a situation what would happen if that was yes. For example, unfortunately, since I had my baby, no. If I had the chance, I'd really like to eat out more often, especially in Chinese or Italian restaurants. So you are speculating and extending your answer. You are showing your language abilities, and of course, it is going to be easier for the examiner to assess your speaking. Now, let's talk about part 1 in a more detailed way, guys. And first of all, you should understand that part 1 will last between 4 to 5 minutes, not more and not less. So do not panic if the examiner is looking at his or her watch from time to time. It is not because they are bored, because they have to keep a track of time. So you will know when part 1 starts because the examiner will turn on the recording device. In part 1, you will be asked questions on 3 everyday topics such as home, hometown, work, studies, etc. So they will change 3 different topics. Okay? You should understand that you cannot ask the examiner to change the topic, so they will choose the topic randomly from a long list. Just because you don't like or know much about a topic doesn't mean you cannot talk about your past, your memories, your hopes, your likes and dislikes, what people in your country like or what is popular. So you can use variety of strategies again to avoid some pauses. For example, if you are asked about your hobby and you don't really have a hobby and it's really difficult for you to talk about a hobby, then you can change the direction of a question. For example, if you're asked, what is your hobby? You can say, technically, I don't have any hobby, but my brother does. He really likes playing his guitar, and sometimes it is annoying, especially when I'm bored after a long day at school. So you're changing the direction of the question, but still answering it, and you're going to receive a good score if you learn how to do this accurately. And of course, you should understand that you will be asked a total of about 12 questions in part 1 based on these 3 topics. The questions will be about your memories, your childhood, your future hopes, your life, your friends, and sometimes about what people think or feel or like in your country. So the examiner will indicate the topic by saying, let's talk about your studies or let's talk about your leisure time activities. So you will clearly know what is the topic. Now, you should understand that your answers will usually be between 1 to 3 sentences, so you don't have to give a long answer. But keep in mind, you should always answer directly to show correct use of grammar. For example, do you like swimming? Yes, I do, but, and of course, you continue. Never give 2 or 3 words as an answer. If you don't show the examiner your English, you will not get a good score. Always add more. Let the examiner decide when to move to the next question. Keep talking until he or she asks the next question. Sometimes IELTS candidates panic when their answer is interrupted. You should be prepared for this. So it is not going to reflect your score or the strength of your answer. It is just part of the testing system. Part 1 sometimes feels like a rapid fire question section. So they ask a question, you answer, they keep going, and of course this happens in a very quick way. So do not panic if they interrupt your answer. So it is fine to give a negative answer. For example, do you often go to the cinema? No, I don't. To be honest, I rarely have time. I think the last time I went to the cinema was about 2 years ago. So it is fine if you give a negative answer. Some questions might require a longer answer because they need more explaining. For example, do you think men and women like similar movies? And you can answer, well, it is hard to say. I suppose that it is common for men to prefer movies that are more action-based with more special effects, while women generally go for romantic movies and comedies. Of course, that is an overgeneralization, but I guess you could say that. So you are explaining your ideas and thoughts. If you are asked about your hometown, this means the town where you spent most of your childhood. If you were brought up in more than one place, you can choose which place to describe. If you're asked about your neighborhood, it means the street and streets around where you live now. If you're asked, do you work or study, just be honest and direct in your answer, because the examiner will then ask you about your work, about your studies, or the examiner will change the topic if you do neither. This is the only time the examiner might change the topic based on your answer. So, first of all, you should be relaxed. The most important thing, you should be prepared and, of course, calm down. Keep an eye contact. Remember that the examiner is just a person as you are. And, of course, you should be answering the questions in a more detailed way. Show your language abilities. And remember, you should be talking until the examiner stops you. This is the end of our lesson, guys. We are going to focus on each type of question in the next lesson, guys, and I do recommend you to practice and work on your vocabulary and grammar. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.